Yes, ma'am. I'm requesting you, please, delegates who are outside, please come inside the hall. Now we have going to start panel session 1. The theme is democracy and pluralism. It is Professor E. Sudharani Madam will be the chair for the session. Please welcome ma'am and occupy the chair. Now the panelist, Professor Hitendra Patel from Ravindra Bharati University, West Bengal. Sir, please welcome. Professor. Panelist, Professor Sripati Ramudu, Director, Center for Exclusion and Inclusion, University of Hyderabad.
I am from
Madam, further proceedings, Professor Sudharani Madam, please do the further proceedings. Thank you.
Rapporteur is welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to this first panel on democracy and pluralism. We are happy to include in this panel Professor Hitendra Patel from Ravindra Bharati University, West Bengal. Welcome, yes, sir. And Professor Sripati Ramudu, Director, Center for Exclusion and Inclusion, Hyderabad Central University, Hyderabad. Welcome you, Professor. Something voice is
This one.
Yeah, this panel is for originally scheduled for half an hour to 40 minutes. Each panelist will present their views on the topic given for 10 to 15 minutes. I'll just brief about start the discussion. The 4 principles of democracy: electoral, liberal, majoritarianism, and consensual participation, deliberate and equalitarianism. Indian democracy, shaped by centuries old of cultural, religious, and social diversity, stands one of the most vibrant and pluralistic political systems in the world. Indian Constitution laid the foundation for the democratic republic where pluralism, coexistence of multiple groups, ideas, perspectives is not merely tolerated but celebrated. Pluralism in the Indian context is the essence of democracy, acknowledging the embracing the cultural, religious, and linguistic differences that form the core of Indian society. So, foundations of pluralism, what are the foundations? The pluralism is enshrined in the preamble of the Constitution itself, which promises liberty of thought, expression, belief, faith, and worship, and upholds the justice, equality, and fraternity for all the citizens. The commitment to secularism ensures that The state remains neutral towards all religions, encouraging an environment and a peaceful coexistence. However, Indian democracy goes beyond religious pluralism to include the linguistic and cultural diversity. With over 122 languages in India and 22 officially recognized languages. Under the 8th schedule of the Constitution, India stands as a model of linguistic pluralism too. This diversity is managed through the federal structure that provides autonomy to states, recognize and promote their linguistic and cultural heritage, which maintaining the unified national identity. So there are several challenges in this panel. We are going to focus on the challenges of Indian democracy and the pluralism also. Democracy has faced several challenges to its pluralistic ideas, especially in the form of religious and ethnic tensions, communal violence, fueled by the political and ideological differences, has occasionally marked the pluralistic fabric of Indian society. In recent years, debates around religious identity, the nationalism, secularism raised the questions about the mere existence of pluralism. Nonetheless, the resilience of Indian democracy is evident in its continuous efforts to engage with these challenges, whether through judicial interventions, civil society activism, or constitutional safeguards. So India is also the house of multiculturalism, and all these aspects of the constitutional provisions, unity and diversity, philosophical and cultural and sociological challenges also India is facing, rise of the regionalism, linguistic disputes, demands for the statehood based on ethnic identities, sometimes strain the concept of unity. However, with a remarkable flexibility in its nature, Indian democracy accommodating such demands, often using the decentralization of political negotiation and tools to manage these tensions. So with all these challenges in front of us, it's a time to ponder upon the aspects of the how the strength and how the in spite of the diversified groups and languages and the identities, how this is being continued wonderfully over centuries is a very marvelous, remarkable feature of Indian democracy. Right from this Ganas Buddhism and Jainism, which gives from the the Sanghas and the Ganas, the republics in vogue. How India traveled a lot in spite of the empires and conquering states outsiders coming into India, but assimilating in Indian situation and encompassing or enlarging the cultural base of Indian society is another remarkable feature of India. So how these constitutional provisions or safeguards have been implemented, and what are the challenges in front of us, and coming to the historical narratives and writings, with this 75 years of independence, we have traveled a lot. We have seen the wars, we have seen the confrontations, conflicts, and another attack which is being subtly or the undercurrent which is happening, sometimes deliberately also, is the challenge to secularist nature of Indian society. How the religious fundamentalism or fanaticism is making a way into the mainstream issues, and how politics are interfering in the mere the flexible fabric of Indian democracy. We are seeing the witness to it. So these challenges have to be addressed by the faculty and the fraternity of historians, and we are the reflections of the contemporary issues also. So we have to be objective enough to address these challenges, not to just ignore these confrontations and challenges in the name of fundamentalism, which is causing much havoc to the fabric of this pluralistic, inclusive society is in front of us to tackle. So with these few points of discussion, because another factor I just want to bring to your notice is that, recently, University of Gothenburg brought out a report. Them, this is title of that report. They have analyzed 202 countries and worked on the 600 attributes of democracy. Interesting facts have been revealed in this report. Among the world countries, 91 are autocratic, they follow the autocratic rule. And 71% of the world population, they live in autocracy. And because it's been increasing, mind you, the number has been increasing. 10 years back, it was only 48%. But now, as per the 2024 report, the autocracy in countries, the countries following or the people living in autocracy has been increased to 71%. And remaining 29% live in liberal and democratic democracies. So it's the edge over the difference between this autocracy and democracy is very huge, and freedom of expression is worsening in 35 countries, and clean electoral politics is worsening and in danger in 23 countries, and freedom of association is also worsening in 20 countries, which they reviewed. And India, with 18% of the world population, is contributing to half of the democratic countries. So this report shows that autocratization continues to be dominant level. So this gives us a very, very big challenge across the world, and how it is being the autocratic moves are being increasing. So India being the country of multi-faith and coexistence, vast diverse population, but still able to continue to be the biggest contributor to the democracy is a wonderful thing to happen. There are several lessons to be learned from Indian coexistence. With this few points, just for the discussion point of view, I invite Professor Hirendra Patel from Ravindra Bharati University, West Bengal, to give his ideas and speak on the Indian democracy and pluralism. Thank you.
Respected Professor P. Sudharani, Professor Srimati Ramodu, and my friends and my seniors like Professor Satyanarayan, Professor Girish Chandra Pandey, and many other friends I can see from here. This morning there was a very fascinating inaugural session in which some of the key things were discussed about how we historians are negotiating with the challenges before us. The starting point of my discussion could be, the discussion point was that somebody higher in the official rank is asking, first tell me whether you are in left or right, which perspective you are with. I would humbly say, sir, we are neither left nor right. We are with historical perspective. I mean, whatever history has to tell us, whatever is there for us to talk about, we will talk about in historical way. Or with the kind of materials we are provided. Professor Satyanarayan actually gave us a point which I would like to begin with. this democracy or modernity or the contact with the West are things which are linked with each other, you know. And this has to be understood. Many times what happens when we talk about democracy, we tend to refer to the ancient republics and all that. I think that is historically valid, but this is for historians to negotiate with. In normal course of discussion, for now, we would like to take the starting point from here that we started talking back to the West around 1900. There is a famous book by my teacher, Professor Puducherry, in which he has talked about talking back from enlightened Indians. And he referred to Tagore, Mahatma Gandhi, and others. We, as modern people, started to talk back. And from there, we have been in a position to negotiate with the ideas which were emanating in Europe. But as it is rightly pointed out by one speaker, that it was not continuing with hegemony. We Indians developed our own kind of thinking, and now we are in a position to think very differently from where we had started. The inclusiveness part, or the ideas which are traveling in 100 years' time, have changed the meanings. Now, Professor Satyanarayan and Professor Sudharani have pointedly talked about that. And this comes to a point where Professor Sudharani has reminded our fellow historians that the challenges are there and you will have to deal with that. And from there, my second point comes that we began well, but at one point of time, we started digressing because we lost the original vigor which our great men had developed while they were negotiating in the early stage. I'm very happy to be with us, with you all, because this is Puducherry World History Congress. Aurobindo, Rabindranath Tagore, Jawaharlal Nehru, and I would like to add one more name, which is not very discussed today. Somebody from Sri Lanka was referring to University of Sri Lanka. I would like to mention Rahul Sankrityayan, a great man, and who was a man who actually gave a wider audience why world is important for us. Why world is important. Sometimes I wonder why a leading political person had to write glimpses of world history. He wrote that, and ultimately he was able to write a book, Discovery of India. He was not a historian, but he was basically trying to deal with a question which had emerged because of this talking back thing. And I find that those challenges are not gone. We still are grappling with the problem, how to deal with the modern ideas, while our own people are not actually ready for those ideas. Maybe, I'm adding maybe, because we must admit at this point of time that democracy came to India largely through enlightened minds. Our masses were not ready for that. And the constitution we are having is a constitution whose ideas were emanating from the great minds who wanted India to be at par with the world democracies. And this is very significant. So if you go through the constitutional debates, you will find the difficulties these people are having, because they are trying to come up with ideas which could put India into a different level. But the problem with these gentlemen were that they had to deal with the masses, and they had to get the assurance of the masses through a process, political process, where several pre-modern ideas were very much in power. So Indian society was not democratic in the terms which we can understand by electioneering and all that. And Indian enlightened leadership was trying to bring great ideas. This is a predicament political people have to face. But this is the problem with all modern intellectuals, including historians, when they deal with this predicament. And nowadays, there is debate going on. A political scientist has come up with an idea, hustle democracy. We are in a democracy where people are very desperate. They have all kind of resources, all kind of things, and they are taking over. They are actually bringing all kind of factors into it, and they are grabbing the opportunities, not concerned about the rules and all that. And Peter D'Souza has written on it, and Yogendra Yadav has referred to a crisis in political philosophy in India. They had an interesting debate. Some of you might have seen those debates. My point is that, yes, we began with great ideas. We wanted to be at par, but our politics, the nature of our politics, actually influenced the march of democracy in India. I'm putting it a very blunt way because I don't have the time to go into the intricacies of all that. We have a constitution which is ensuring certain rights. The idea of liberty, which is also changing, and social justice is coming up, and all kind of things. Great Ambedkar was there to oversee all these things. And he was able to incorporate certain ideas which was not seen very positively at that point of time. But later on, it unfolded that those were very important points. And not only Ambedkar, there were many others. We must not take the credit from that. But the issue is that this pluralism, another thing which we have to refer to, this pluralism is a virtue or some kind of a problem. The idea of democracy in the enlightened mind was such that the pluralism was an asset. This is something which was good. If you read Rabindranath Tagore, this diversity is very good. All kind of colors are there, all kind of languages are there, and all these things are coming together in the ocean of India. This is how Rabindranath Tagore conceived the idea of India, the march of history, and the ocean called India, where all kind of cultures are coming and getting submerged. So this is where we started. But as Professor Ishwadharani was pointing out, there has been a kind of problem emanating in the last few decades. And please remember, this is not only the problem of India. This is a global problem. Habermas has written extensively on it, of the rise of neoconservatism in 80s onwards particularly. In fact, its germs were there in the earlier times, but there was a rise of neoconservatism. Historians, unfortunately, did not really take into cognizance the global influence of neoconservatism, and that is why we are finding difficult to deal with the emerging voices which were there with the coming of globalization. Somebody referred to the kind of thing which is world history. Why people started thinking of world history, and now planet history and earth history. All these things are going on. As young researchers are here, I must mention here that history is also changing, democracy is also changing, liberty is also changing, our aspirations are also changing, our societies are changing. How can historians, whose primary job is to explain the changes, can remain unaffected by all this? And that is why I think I should refer to one historian, Eric Hobsbawm. Please remember that Eric Hobsbawm, E.P. Thompson, and many other historians started together. And in the 60s, Eric Hobsbawm realized the importance of world history. And he was the first to look towards a global perspective. And that is why he wrote the book in which the global perspective comes to us in a better way. He started with his own English history, but late 60s onwards, he was the first to understand that things are to be understood at the global level. And therefore, if you read very carefully, Age of Extreme, you would find that he is trying to connect the problems of history of India, of Latin America, of Africa, Italy, and other places in a very different way. In fact, I would refer to that because I think in that global perspective, he finds that in India, there was a conflict going on between what he calls traditional India and what he calls modern India. And these traditional Indians and modern Indians had been struggling all along during national movement also. So traditional India was struggling with middle class modern India, and in which he situates, very interestingly, Mahatma Gandhi's predicament. He is speaking the language of the traditional India, but he was ultimately in favor of modern India. And this is where I think Eric Hobsbawm becomes very important for us. Eric Hobsbawm's drift towards the global perspective is one such thing which must not be missed. You're right. People are very, in the first session, it was referred that world history perspective of the 80s was something which was much needed. But we also tend to link it with the understanding of the globe of the earlier times, and particularly 1960s onwards, when Eric Hobsbawm understood the importance of global perspective. And he started trying to link, trying to understand Latin American, Italian Communist Party movement, etc., and trying to understand what is there in India, why India is like that. And for young historians, I would mention that Eric Hobsbawm comes to India and he travels a lot, he could not understand Indian languages, but he is interested in knowing what is the response of the people. And in that connection, he is following A.R. Desai. He goes to Sultanganj of Bihar. He goes to meet young people of Calcutta and Scottish Church, where young Sumit Sarkar was there to host Eric Hobsbawm. So these things were there. We must not forget that. And therefore, historians had been grappling with this problem, how to think about problems of Indian democracy, Indian politics, and where the enlightened leadership was trying to build a democratic system, but the masses were not actually understanding properly what the leaders were trying to do. Here, the role of the intelligentsia becomes very, very vital. We have to understand there is a distinct gap between the enlightened minds, great ideas, and the reception, particularly mediated by electoral process. And here I find there is something we must think afresh. And in this kind of a gathering, we must try to realize that there are institutions, there are memories which are there in society, but historians seem to be reluctant to take those issues for the discussions. Even temple history, even some kind of popular images, popular histories and different kind of things, we historians need to be slightly more careful. Our friends are working in different ways, but I'm sorry, historians are not really so concerned. The ideology comes somewhere to take the center stage. We become more political than what can be permissible to become a real historian. And I'm saying this with a lot of risk, I know, because things are so partisan these days, things are so ideologically seen today that everything has to be reduced to a political level, political equation, whether you are with this group or that group. And here I find there is some bit of problem among historians also. And this problem needs to be addressed. You will compare, if you compare with the perspectives which are there in literature, which are available in literature, and what we find in history, we find that our literatures had done reasonably well in comparison to historians. There are much more deeper understanding of these kind of problems, negotiations and politics and all that in literature. Unfortunately, Indian historians, at least the prominent ones, do not read Indian language literature, Indian literature in Indian languages. I hope, I'm not very familiar, but I hope that in southern states, sensitive historians are there who are willing to take that job of dealing with literature. I am very sure that for social history, even for political history, our literature can be a great source. I had referred to Rahul Sankirtan. I can go on telling many names from Bengal, from Bihar, from Uttar Pradesh, from other places, from Rajasthan also, where literature actually gives us some kind of additional source base for writing the history, political and social history of India. And therefore, we have large number of sources available to us for giving a fresh perspective to our own history of the time when democracy is trying to deal with a situation where it is not very sure what kind of democracy we will have from 10 years from now in India. There is a great challenge, and those challenges are coming from those people who are or who have a different understanding of democracy. Professor Sudharani was referring to majority, or some other scholar was saying about it, the majority. The majority is problem. Minority is no less than majority if you are a democratic person. From a democratic perspective, you have to give respect to even minority. Somebody was telling that in southern India, there is a problem of minority. Perhaps Sandeep ji was telling that Malayali, Telugu world does not get reflected that way. Therefore, I think first lesson of democracy should be that a majority has an additional responsibility to ensure for a democratic order that minority should not feel left out. There is no majority-minority play can be possible in democracy. I'm going out of history to address to what Professor Sudharani had raised, because, we are not only historians. We have a social existence of today. So when we deal with history, we can widen the sources, we can deal with many problems, we talk about it. But as social beings of today's India, where these things are being contested, we must have an additional responsibility. We will have to reach out to the people with our historical knowledge to make them understand why we are not able to do justice to those people who greatly need social justice. People are not very aware of why people are feeling cheated, why they feel that with the deepening of democracy, some people who might have got this power much earlier still are unable to get that. We need to create a new kind of awareness through our historical writings, which must again be inclusive. It should not be partisan. There should be an approach where all sides should come together to give us a total perspective. And that is why I think the ideological reading of the various processes is not helping us. It is only dividing the society. And that division is not what what Dr. Ambedkar had thought about. I'm referring to Dr. Ambedkar because many people do not pay much attention to what Ambedkar has said in 1946 lecture when he talks about the unity of India. Unity of India is extraordinarily important. And many people are portraying Ambedkar as somebody who was only interested in sectional interest. He was not. He was a great patriot in real sense. And Professor Sudharani has rightly pointed out that he was actually interested in a section because for that section, that was primary. And then he wanted to come to national movement perspective, for which he is blamed sometimes because he was not actually taking active part the way some other leaders were. Now it is to open up. It is to acknowledge certain things which are there. We must not get partisan at this crucial hour because we have to reach out to the masses also with our historical knowledge and a kind of historical awareness with the help of, with great inputs from literature, with great help from people who are influential in the popular domain. We can also take help of films. The films are also part of this entire enterprise. Only historians will not be our guide to our past. Our great reformers also are helping us. Great cultural figures are also helping us. So we must widen our scope, try to see where we lagged. We lagged behind, where we failed, how we could fail. We can actually reach out to people and take the lesson from Gautam Buddha. This is my last point. Today, we are waiting in the institutions, expecting that people will come to us and we will enlighten them. The time has come to be parivrajak. We have to reach out to them. We must come out of our own secluded, institutional, secured places because those days are gone. We are now more vulnerable. We have to reach out to people. Reach out to people means we have to go to people, listen to them, and try to find out why our ideas are not going to them, reaching to them. And in that connection, my last point would be to change the language of history. I'm not in a position, or I'm not thinking that English is not helping us, but English knowledge is not enough for historians in this present context. We must use and use it creatively, the Indian languages, for reaching out to people. History is to be saved. Historians should be supportive of the idea that Indian history should be written in Indian languages without excluding English as a medium, which would link these different production things. I welcome all the people who are writing in their own languages. And that is how we will be able to understand the democracy and pluralism. Thank you very much for giving me this great opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Hirensh, for your wonderful insights and then starting from citing several other researchers on democracy and the main point he focused on the need to create a new awareness. And Hirendra reminded me of a caricature drawn by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. No one, I think very few of you knows about he being a painter also, like, you know, he draw the caricature of Buddha, where we see Buddha as with closing eyes in meditative mode, but the caricature drawn by him is Buddha's eyes widely open, and he's going as a parivrajak into the people, like he is not sitting and meditating, but he's taking a stick and, you know, walking position. So that picture of him tells about the hundreds of stories, like, you know, how he perceived the Buddhism, not in the confined to the meditation point of view, but going to the people, and his entire concept of Buddha is the Sangha, going to the people and preaching and the right ways of living. So this very well said, Hirendra, about the parivrajik kind of the responsibility of us to reach the public. And yes, he used the Pali as a language, not as a Sanskrit, which is in vogue that time. So this kind of, reorienting ourselves according to the times, changing times. We have in history, we have in examples, and we have Ambedkar who taught about all these aspects. And he also said, Ambedkar's one word, one sentence, we need to make our political democracy a social democracy. This is a very crucial point in this process, like, the times we are undergoing a big challenge to democracy, because we are just terming as electoral politics and making people as a pawns to win the elections and forget about the societal change. So with this, thank you, Hirendra, for pointing out several aspects. And I request my brother, Professor Sripati Ramadu, to talk about the Indian democracy in liberalism. He has worked extensively on the exclusion, inclusion, and all the pluralism and multiculturalism. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. At the outset, I would like to thank Professor Sudharani Madam for this great opportunity, because this is one of the crucial issues India has been passing through. And there is a question as to, can we sustain with the plurality and diversity, and what would happen to the peaceful coexistence with the ongoing attacks? And I would also like to thank Professor Patel and Dr. Sunil Kumar. Friends, in fact, I don't know whether we can do justice to this topic, but this is one of the crucial topics which needs a lot of attention today across the world. Countries across the world have different communities. They are internally plural, with diverse religious groups, languages, cultures, traditions, food habits, and so on. And this diversity is quite natural. Nobody can overcome this diversity, because evolution is like that. If you look at the evolution altogether, everywhere there is diversity. And this natural diversity is facing a threat with the onset of conservative forces. Over a period of time, particularly with the rise of neoliberal politics, the conservative forces are rising and posing a threat to the multicultural existence of different communities. Particularly, the culture has come to get attacked a lot. Culture has become a bone of contention. And cultures are different, as we know. Anthropologists, sociologists have been discussing, and every one of us know it is part of our experience. You can't have a homogeneous culture as such. But there is a intense opposition against this cultural diversity. And particularly certain groups with the conservative attitudes and using politics as a weapon, they are trying to curb the diversity. And all the time they talk about unity, integrity, all these things, whereas the evolution itself is very diverse in nature, plural in character. And now the God has become a weapon in the hands of political leaders, and the political leaders become the saviors of God. God has also been in the hands of the people who, see, always this is a question, if God is not powerful, are you coming for his rescue? And are you insulting your own gods? This is always a puzzle to me. And it is clear that God is used to divide society, to polarize society for political gains. And this must be understood and must be addressed in a different manner. Now, because with the liberalism, in the liberalism, we have two dimensions. One is human dimension, the other one is anti-human dimension. Human dimension, when the society was conservative from the Middle Ages and all, there was a liberal approach to give relief to humanitarian approach. But now that got exhausted totally. Now we are in the second side where the anti-human forces are, they have been rising and now they are in a pre-climax stage. Definitely there would be a climax for them. And now, how to address this issue? There are different languages, different religions, different food habits, but there is a rise of conservative forces in society against the diversity for their political gains. And how can we address and sustain democracy in such a situation? You have different thinkers, philosophers who came out and openly argued in support of diversities. One important scholar is Puducherry. Puducherry has always been arguing in support of pluralism, saying that the presence of multiple cultures always enriches the human existence. This is a belief, it's not a belief. The protagonists of a single culture, homogeneity, well know that their argument is very limited, it is irrational, but they are always against a kind of they are always in favor of some kind of a polarization which could bring them some political benefits. But in this context, the argument offered by Puducherry is quite valid. And you know, without the presence of many cultures, no life can be enriched. And no single culture is potential enough to explore the human potential fully. Therefore, always the presence of many cultures must be seen as benefiting the human communities rather than posing a threat. Actually, those who are with the partisan views and all, they always try to project that homogeneity of culture is always essential, which is not possible and which is against the nature altogether. Now, the second scholar is Charles Taylor. This philosopher goes to the extent of saying that, see, the plurality is always doing good to the society and contribute as much as you can to your own society. If not contribute, don't destroy it, let it go its own way and let it not perish. In that sense, Charles Taylor argument is very valid and it is relevant for us also here in our country. And this is a big threat today we are facing across the world. And people are destroying, let alone contributing anything to the existing human cultures. The rich cultural mosaic is required for an enriched life. And if you can't preserve it, if you can't contribute anything to the enrichment of the culture, please don't destroy and do your own work and don't look at the culture, destroying the culture. Thirdly, Will Kimlicka, another scholar who is a great protagonist of pluralism, argues that presence of multiple cultures offers several options, choices. Amartya Sen's argument we know, choice is a freedom. If there is no choice, there is no freedom. Without freedom, what choice you can expect? Without choices, if you call anything a freedom, it is meaningless. That's why presence of multiple cultures is very, very essential for enriching human life. And those who argue that only one culture needs to be existed would always be in partisan intent. Now, in a liberal democratic system, always there are tensions. This poses tensions. And to overcome these tensions, the democratic state has come out with a solution called citizenship. In the public domain, every one of us would be considered as citizens, divide off our identities. All the ascribed identities they are all ascribed. They are not chosen. And nothing could be given depending on the ascribed identities. These assigning the identities, these ascribed identities have certain political baggages or ideological baggages or some kind of a hypocrisy behind it. You are considered as a top with one identity, a middle with another identity, and lower. These kind of ascribed identities are always posing a threat. Therefore, to overcome all these things, the liberal Democrats have advocated that citizenship is much better. And in the public domain, you should participate as a citizen, not as a Brahmin, not as a Dalit, not as a backward classes or anything. But at least that is much better, though not addressing all the issues. Right, coming to our own context in India, diversity has been created by the so-called intellectual classes. And diversity has intensified the divisions in society, leading to intense tensions in society. Harmony is totally destroyed. But interestingly, they also demand a homogeneity. They have created heterogeneity, diversity with castes. They have created thousands of castes and destroyed harmony, intense tensions in society, and ultimately, again, for political gains, they want all of us to be identified with one homogeneous group, one religious community, What nonsense is this? And such an hypocrisy you won't see anywhere. There should be a logic in the construction of all these things. You are the people who created all the diversities, divisions, and again, you demand that homogeneity. Here we should understand that for their purposes, they want homogeneity. And also they want destroying the cultural mosaic of this country, diverse characters, diverse identities of this country, they wanted to destroy. But at times, they demand a homogeneous character, which is totally a paradox. Now, it is posing a challenge. And exactly at this context only, Dr. Ambedkar was asked to write the constitution. While writing constitution, Ambedkar had faced two problems. It is a very huge country, multiple diversities, thousands of castes, religious groups, geographical diversities, and all these things. Writing a constitution is not simple for such a huge and complex country like India. To make a small decision at the family level to make which curry, my son demands mutton, my daughter demands chicken, I demand some other thing, beef. Then you don't come at a conclusion in the family level itself. But writing a constitution for a country is not a small thing. It is such a complex issue, Ambedkar has handled it. And two things were in front of him. One, developing the integrity in the country, number one. And also preserving the diversities. Because no identity, no community want to forego their identities. Therefore, all identities also should be preserved. If Ambedkar proposes for wiping off all identities, Ambedkar would have been wiped off. They would have wiped off Ambedkar himself. But Ambedkar doesn't take such a kind of view because he wanted to respect all the identities. He doesn't want to wrap up all those things. Therefore, he wanted to preserve diversities. At the same time, the maximum extent possible, he wanted to preserve create integrity also. What a beautiful thought. Actually, if you look into the constitutional framework, you would understand this. Certain communities have been excluded totally. Certain communities have given priority, dominance, everything. Haves and have-nots have been created by the Indian tradition. And now Ambedkar wanted to make the constitution as a level playing field. The beautiful understanding of Ambedkar. That was the reason, you see, if you look at the Constitution of India, if anyone asks you to define Constitution of India in one word or one phrase, always I say, it is an antidote to Manusmriti. Manusmriti, you find all inequalities. Constitution, you find equality. In Manusmriti, you find gender bias. In Constitution of India, you get equality. In Manusmriti, you have economic inequalities. In Constitution, you have economic equality, proposing that at least. So, all these things, if you look at the Constitution appears to be an antidote to Manusmriti. The beautiful understanding of Ambedkar has not just written Constitution like that. He has done it beautifully and defined. So, Constitution, he took Constitution as a means where he can play a level playing field. Dalits were given rights. Tribes were given equal rights, I mean to say. Tribals were given equal rights. Women were given equal rights. Backward classes were given equal rights. Everybody has been given equal rights. At least in Constitution, you can go and challenge whether you like it or not. This is a fact. People may not be happy with my understanding, but whether you like it or not, this is the fact. If you can come for a challenge, discussion, everything, I'm ready to answer. So everybody has given a right in Constitution of India. That is the strength of the Constitution today. If it is not there, at least you can go and challenge in the court of law. Manusmriti doesn't give you that. Manusmriti has placed certain people there and other people at the lower ranks. So that way, Ambedkar has done a great work by doing this kind of a constitution. And he wanted to give democracy to bring this here. And he defined democracy as equality and justice, simply. An associated living, which is not there here, which has been destroyed by your tradition. Your tradition has destroyed all these things, and Ambedkar wanted to bring them all back. So that way, democracy, whether someone likes it or not, it is a plural society. Nature is plural, society is plural, world is plural, and also beautiful. Plural is beautiful, whether you like it or not. And today, people wanted to destroy that diversity, naturality, and wanted to write a fiction instead of writing history. They don't want to use historiography. They want to use their own political ideologies to guide the history writing. Therefore, at a time when the world is at crossroads with regard to larger threats posed to plurality, Ambedkar University and Puducherry World History Congress have taken up a wonderful task. And really, I congratulate the organizers for a wonderful organization of this thing. And finally, again, I would like to say, diversity is natural, universal, and beautiful. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, brother, for making your voluntary significant and talking about the evolution of this plural. And he goes on with liberalism has several dimensions of liberalism and how to sustain the democracy, citing the works of these famous writers and all. So, yeah, Indian diversity has been created, and yes, this homogeneity and heterogeneity has been discussed by many scholars also. When India is being a heterogeneous society, how a homogeneous society is possible? This is a million-dollar question in front of us. So the constitutional framework and the constitution played a level being, but in society still the caste and the gender diversities are prevailing and dividing the people, and a lot of challenges need to be addressed in this regard. So I won't take much time. Just I'll wind up this discussion. It has well covered by Hirendra Patel and Shripati Ramadu on talking about the several aspects of the pluralism and how to sustain the democracy. And the final word, I'll just conclude. We have discussed about the problems and the fundamental problem, obstacle to democracy, that B.R. Ambedkar viewed religious foundation of caste as the fundamental obstacle to democracy in India. This final the sentence speaks volumes about the religion as well as the religious foundation of the caste. The roots of the caste system is lied in the religion itself. So the women's segregation or the diversity, when we talk about this associated living, the threat to the associated living, how Ambedkar viewed democracy as the associated living, but in practice in the society, this associated living itself is a challenge. It's the biggest challenge in view of the caste and the religion in Indian society. So thank you so much for your patient listening in spite of you being hungry. So we have exceeded your time and patience. Thank you so much for the wonderful listening. Let's break for lunch and then assemble again.
Panelists.
Hi, it is an honor for us to felicitate the chairperson for the panelists, Dr. I request Professor Srinivasa Vadanan to felicitate Professor Isudha Rani, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar Open University.
Name will stitches. I'll filtrate. Okay.
Okay, I'm sorry. So I request Professor E. Sudharani, Dr. B. R. Ambedkar Open University to felicitate Professor Hitendra Patel, Ravindra Bharati University, West Bengal.
Session.
Thank you. Thank you. Wonderful. Oh, thank you.
Now to felicitate Professor Shripati Raghundu, Director, Center for Exclusion and Inclusion, Hyderabad.
Thank you.
Gajendra, you know Gajendra?
Yes, thank you.
You know, works for the United Del Students. I was in both of them.
Oh, I've heard about it.
Let's have a picture. Yeah, this one. Sir, keep a flag. Yeah. And, yeah, that was a Hindu atrocity and then got together on. And you know about that, about the seven.
Now to honor Professor Pallavi Abde, Department of Public Administration, sorry, my apologies. Sunil Kumar sir for doing the Raghavi report.
Thank you. Thank you, please.
Yeah, we'll have a half an hour break for lunch and we'll assemble here again for the second panel discussion.
And technical sessions also will be started.
And the technical sessions will parallelly start. The second panel discussion is on cultural heritage for sustainable and inclusive planet here in mini auditorium. And the technical session for ancient world is opposite the dining hall in first floor, which is speaker hall for ancient world 1. And the technical session medieval world 2 is beside the